Hi, Samina. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you guys?
We're good. Much better now.
Yes.
Good.
Thank you so much for doing this interview with us. We very, very much appreciate it. For our followers who are watching this is the second time that we had to interview Samina because the audio that we had was horrible. And we were telling Samina we're amateurs.
Mm-hmm.
This is our first time doing this. We've never done a like FaceTime, video chat. Right. So, Samina, we so appreciate you because the original interview,
Yeah, of course.
The original interview was amazing.
It was beautiful.
And I'm so sad that we didn't get the audio from it. So, thanks for being willing to do this again.
Of course. Hopefully the second time around it'll be better.
So, Samina, can you tell us a little bit about you and where you grew up?
Yeah, so I'm from Georgia, and I was actually born in New York, but I moved down to Georgia when I was really young. So Georgia's really home and all I remember. And we actually, initially when we lived in New York, my dad, we lived in the Bronx because my dad had a good job as a waiter. That's really like the best he could find at the time because this is something I didn't mention yesterday, but he started college and he was really into math. Started his bachelor's in Belgium, but then ended up that he had to support his family. They had a lot of financial needs, so he had to drop out of college and then provide for them. But then after getting married, he thought, going to the U.S. would give him some more opportunity. So that's why he ended up in New York. There's a lot of job opportunities there. And then he was really looking to start a business. He thought that would be the next best step since he didn't have a degree. And that would be a way for him to really make it in the U.S. And he found a good opportunity in Georgia, in Chamblee actually, where he was able to run a restaurant. And so we initially lived in an apartment near the train station. It was really diverse, had a lot of Bengalis, and my family's Bangladeshi. They're from Bangladesh. And there's a lot of Bengalis, a lot of Asians, a lot of Hispanics. And so it was really diverse. But then as business was getting better, we were able to move into a suburban neighborhood. But growing up there was a little challenging because we were pretty much the only race of our kind in that area. It was predominantly white. And then the elementary school that I went to actually was more diverse than my neighborhood. So even though there was a good number of white people, I just remember like looking at people who are white and automatically thinking they were cooler, just because they had all these opportunities that I didn't have. And I really wanted that. They always made everything look so exciting, like the sleepovers and all the parties and all the holidays they celebrated that I didn't celebrate. But as time went on, I was able to grow closer to friends that were able to relate to just my lifestyle, like having a different culture, speaking a different language, eating different food, having different types of clothing. So yeah, I grew to definitely appreciate that. Yeah. So in high school, so for our family, it's really important for us to stay close together and to still live with our families. So I didn't have too many options for college. It was my parents really encouraged me to stay in state, and so the best college I could find for me that fit my my goals and my future plans was University of Georgia. So I got into University of Georgia and I was really excited. I started college there, but I realized that it wasn't really a culture fit for me. And as I was getting older, I was starting to feel that no matter how much I tried, like I just really felt out of place when I was surrounded by majority white people. And it's not to say that they were being racist, like no one was saying anything, but it's just like what it was really like the actions and how it's kind of hard to put there. It was almost just kind of indirect where I felt excluded. And over time, I found this sorority. I joined a South Asian sorority, and it was really awesome. But at the same time, like it just felt weird being in a rural city. I'm not used to a rural lifestyle. So eventually I transferred to Georgia State University, which is in downtown Atlanta. And being downtown, there's a lot of diversity, lots of cultures mixing, and I just really enjoyed my time. So I was really thankful for ending up there for my bachelor's. So I had never heard of speech language pathology when I started college. I went through so many different majors, and I know that I really valued education, and I also really valued healthcare, but I didn't know that there would be a field that incorporated both. So when I was around my second year of college, my sister was nannying this young girl. She had a lot of motor needs, a lot of communication needs, and there would be a speech pathologist that visited her, like home health SLP, and she was telling me a lot about her field, and just when she explained the diversity of the field, it was just so fascinating, and it was just amazing to see that you could do so many things as an SLP. And the more after that, I did a lot of research, and the more I researched, and I got a chance to volunteer in opportunities where I could talk to SLPs. I remember that all of the SLPs, they all said literally the same thing, and that's what really sold me. And they said that they wouldn't trade this job for anything else in the world, and that this was their dream job. And I was like, wow, I've never heard so many people say that about their job. After that, I decided to declare my concentration, because there wasn't a bachelor's degree at State, my concentration in communication across the lifespan. And then after that, I applied for grad school in Georgia, and I got into the University of West Georgia, which is also a very rural town like University of Georgia was. And so initially I was really hesitant and really unhappy, because it kind of took me back to feeling excluded and just feeling really out of place and uncomfortable. But eventually I ended up really enjoying it. I actually got a lot of opportunities there that I didn't think I would have, and I think I wouldn't have had in other universities. So West Georgia definitely has a special place in my heart. During my clinical fellowship year, I worked in two schools, an elementary school, Stone Mountain Elementary, and then at Clarkston High School. And Clarkston is a region in Atlanta that was and may still be considered the most diverse square mile in the U.S. There were students in that high school from, I keep messing up the numbers, but it's high up there. There's like students from over, I want to say 47 countries, and speaking over like 52 languages. That includes dialects. Yeah, and I had never heard of a school like that. And it also in the county had the largest deaf and hard of hearing program, which was really exciting for me because I had that background. But it was awesome to see that, and I really became passionate towards the students that really needed it, because I saw students that came from different countries as refugees, and as a high schooler, I've noticed that a lot of students are very embarrassed to come to speech, and that makes them like less cool. But a lot of the students that came from different countries, like, it didn't matter to them. They like took it very seriously. They're very grateful for it, and that just made me put in more. It just made me put a lot more passion into my work. Now, I work at an outpatient pediatric clinic, and I want to say about 80% of the patients are Hispanic. Our entire front desk speaks Spanish, and then we have 5 SLPs that just moved here from Puerto Rico, and they're bilingual, so that helps a lot. And then the rest of the patients are very diverse. Like, we have patients from East and West Africa, South Asia, East Asia, so it's really nice to still have that, to be able to have the opportunity to work with diverse patients. Well, MIST, it stands for Muslim Interscholastic Tournament, and it actually started in Texas, and it's it's a youth competition for Muslim high school students, and it's really an opportunity for Muslim high school students to be able to find people like them and to also get the type of support that other students get, like in their high schools or in their communities, because they a lot of times grow up feeling really out of place because the faith that we practice has different beliefs and different customs than others. So I think MIST really gives people an opportunity to embrace their faith, but also to establish connections and find mentors and role models. So on top of being able to compete in these tournaments, they get, the bonus of lifelong friendships and mentorship. And so what I've been doing, I've been involved with MIST for about 8 years, and I was the associate director last year. And now I'm stepping down because I have some more career goals that I want to address. But it still holds value to me. And yeah, we had, like, in Atlanta alone, it's been growing. We had about 500 competitors this year at our regional tournament. Yeah.
Wow,
and so we're just hoping to keep growing.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, because I get it all the time in my community. They always are trying to figure out what it is that I do. So MIST has a national tournament every year where all the regions come together, compete against each other, and we host a series of workshops. And they asked me to speak at a career panel because they wanted to know more about speech pathology, and they were very intrigued by it. So while I was speaking at the panel, I actually had a few students, high school students, come up to me saying, like, I didn't even know that was out there, because a lot of times, like, immigrant families in the Muslim community encourage kids to be like a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, but they don't realize there's so many more opportunities out there where you can make a positive impact on others. So it was really cool to be able to influence people like that. And I even judged a competition, a speech competition. And there was a student who did a really amazing job. He came up to me and he asked me for my number, and he said, I want to explore this field more. So I think I definitely recommend people who are minority to go out into their communities and just share what it is that we do. Mm-hmm. So actually, I live with my family and my grandmother, and she got sick pretty recently, and she's 95 years old. She's really fighting and hanging in there, but she's had a lot of needs that an SLP is able to take care of. So a lot of difficulty swallowing, and just, with her cognition. And I have become so passionate about helping the geriatric population after seeing what she's going through. Initially, like in grad school, when we had those opportunities, it was very intimidating for me. But just being able to be there for her firsthand and be able to provide like activities, and something I didn't mention yesterday, but just comparing to working with the geriatric population in grad school, a lot of the adults that we worked with were born and raised in the U.S. So, and they're mostly Christian. So there was a lot of songs that my classmates would sing to them from church and do like Christmas related activities, Thanksgiving and Halloween. But I got the unique chance and opportunity for with my grandmother to be able to implement things from home in Bangladesh and be able to do activities related to our religious holidays. So my plan, I have this plan to work with the geriatric population, take some more CEUs, get some more experience in that. But I really want to be able to provide that to geriatric patients who come from minority backgrounds.
Thinking back to yesterday, there was you did share a difficult story that was challenging for me to hear, but I was wondering if you could share that again, because I think it's important and for others to know kind of the daily, day-to-day things that we as professionals of color have to deal with all the time. If you don't mind sharing again.
Yeah, no, I don't mind sharing. And I think it's really important to address this too, because it's something that I feel like others might look at and see like, oh, you just like brush it off and like, suck it up and keep going. But it's definitely, there's, I'm trying to figure out how to put this. I just think like what the negative experiences that we've had due to being a person of color, there's so much that isn't said that just really needs to be talked about. So when I was in grad school, I had a rotation at an outpatient clinic, and I remember this mother was in the waiting room with her son, who was going to be my next client, and I called him back into my room, and then while he was working with me, so he had autism, and he was also a little non-compliant, like he was refusing to sit down, he was kind of running around the room, and he was a little aggressive. So after the session, and my supervisor was there, she was watching, and she was helping me out as well. So after the session, I sent him back to his mother, and his mother looked at him and was like, "What happened?" And I was like, he was just kind of running around, and it was really hard to get him to stay seated and listen. So I really tried to get him to calm down. And she's like, "But I just did his hair this morning," and I was really confused, like, why is she talking about his hair? And then she goes, "What did you do to my son?" Yeah, and I was just, that's when, like, I just felt my heart sink, like, oh my God, she thinks I did something to him. And I just froze. Like, in that moment, I didn't know how to respond. Like, I wasn't prepared to deal with a conflict like this. So I said, you know what, let me get my supervisor. At this point, I'm just kind of shaking, like, oh my God, I can't believe someone would think I'd do that to their kid. And my supervisor was like, "It's okay. You just go sit down and I'll talk to the parent." After she spoke to the parent, my supervisor told me that the parent said she didn't want someone who looks like me to work with her child. And that was just so jarring for me. I was so emotional because it just reminded me of all the insecurities that I already have coming into work. Like, I look visibly different. Like, I wear something that's not commonly seen. And so I go into work every day, and I go into settings outside of my community, and that's constantly in the back of my mind, like, what are people going to think? And for that nightmare to come true, it was so difficult, and I actually couldn't even work that day. I had to like make up my hours later because it was very difficult. My supervisor is very understanding, but things like that should not be happening. Yeah, I was just talking about yesterday how I think it's pretty incredible how a lot of the negative thoughts and negative things that adults say about how we look based on our background is all learned and it's all taught, because a lot of the times when I work with kids, I have never encountered a child that has said something negative for the way that I look or for where I come from. Like, they see my scarf, they ask about it because, it's something they've never seen, and they're curious, and they even, they want to know, and I tell them. And then once they understand, they're like, all right, cool. And sometimes girls have, gotten their winter scarves and they put it on their head and they say, look, I look like Miss Samina. And it's very innocent. And I really appreciate that. Mm-hmm. So, during my CF year, I remember, I was very insecure, and I was also pretty surprised at how much I said. There was weight to what I would say to families. And there were times where families told me how grateful they were for what I said, things that they had not known before that is really going to help their children. And I was just amazed. And those times, like, there were lots of times in my CF where I'm like, am I doing this right? Am I saying the right things? And then when parents would say things like that, I'd be like, gosh, I wish I wrote that down. So now what I do is a lot of times when families say really just very unique compliments, I always like to write those down. And then also just like cards that I've gotten from friends, like from graduation, and then cards from families when I'm no longer working with them. I like to look back at those during times where I just feel like I'm having a difficult time or if I'm burning out. I also hold on to just like drawings that kids have made for me. I had this 5th grader who drew a credit card with my name on it, and to express his gratitude, he put like, I think it was like $60 billion. And I was like, wow, if only like SLPs could make that much.
If only you had that PIN number. It was
I
a
know.
real card. Credit card. But kids are so funny and cute. Like, I really think he probably wishes he could give you, that money and what you need, and
what is sweet.
Yeah, it's really sweet. Yeah. And there's actually another thing that I didn't realize it literally gave me a surge of motivation. So I didn't get a chance to evaluate a lot of people who speak Bengali, or if they were Bengali, English was their first language. So I encountered this one family where Bengali was their first language, and their daughter was more exposed to Bengali. And what I really was so grateful for was just being able to use like my mother tongue and impact her, and be able to educate the family on a very personal level. And she was demonstrating some warning signs of autism. Her parents didn't really know anything about autism. It was a very difficult conversation, but I could just see the look in her eyes on how comfortable she felt, because there was somebody who spoke her language and was able to walk her through the whole thing. And so like when I talked to like my other bilingual SLP coworkers, I was like, wow, I like know how you guys feel whenever you guys have to do evaluations in Spanish and be able to talk to families who really need it. So that was just, I'm never going to forget that feeling.
Right.
So I was saying that, there were times in my childhood where I was so ungrateful for looking different, for speaking another language. There are just so many times I wish I could change that about myself. And I had a lot of negative thoughts with regards to my culture, the food. Like my mom would sometimes pack Bengali food for lunch for me, and I hated it. And I noticed that when you think that way, your experiences are always going to be negative, and it's never going to be positive. And I had a supervisor in grad school tell me this quote that's just literally everywhere now. It's bloom where you are planted. And I like that because it really makes you, if you really apply that quote, you can try to find all of the positives in the situations that you're in. So like, for example, when I went to West Georgia for grad school, I was really nervous. I was a little ungrateful in the beginning, but when I decided if I was going to keep living like that, I had the choice to make it positive. So when I turned my perspective around, I had some amazing opportunities. Like I got to do the ASHA Minority Student Leadership Program in 2016, and I got some really amazing research opportunities and got to present research with my professors. And I even had my professors invite me back the year after I graduated as a keynote speaker for their pudding ceremony for the graduates the following year. And I just think that, like, if I didn't think that way, I just wouldn't have been graced with those opportunities.
Mm-hmm.